is 7:02. The council will come to order. All rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
Flag,
to
of the United States of America and to the
and to
republic
the republic for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands, one nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty and
justice for
justice
all.
for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our veterans, servicemen and women, and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. You may be seated. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson here.
Mel,
Mel here.
Condon,
Condon here.
Crow,
Here.
Di Maria,
Maria here.
Linehan.
She'll be right on. She's having a little Wi-Fi issue.
Okay, Murphy,
Murphy, yeah.
O'Malley,
O'Malley here.
Spatafora,
Got a 4 here.
Winslow,
Enzo here.
Sika.
Sika here. The provisions of the open meeting law, for those of you in attendance, please be informed that MATV, along with the City of Malden and resident John Mayara, are recording this evening's meeting. Please be aware there will be audio and video recording of this evening's meeting. First order of business.
Paper 410-20, Deborah Burke, Executive Director of the MRA, will appear before the council to provide an update on planning and economic development in the city of Malden.
Good evening, Debbie.
Good evening, councilors.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to, just to kick this off, to thank you all for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. And I do so with great honor. I want to unveil a proposal that will actually reimagines the way we perform economic development, community development, and planning functions in the city of Malden. I really believe, given my 34 years of service to the redevelopment authority in the city, that we're at a time at this juncture that we have an opportunity to reposition our efforts to better serve the needs of the residents in the community for 10, 20, even 30 years. I have been working with Ron Hogan at the mayor's suggestion. The mayor and I have partnered on wanting to roll out this proposal this evening. And we've come up with, I guess, a roadmap, if you will, of how this plan could go forward. It's going to mean several, more discussions and an open dialogue with all of you and the mayor's office to see how it advances. But I'm wondering if you would indulge Ron and I to walk you through a PowerPoint presentation that we've put together that kind of gives an overview of the plan. But I do want at the outset just to let you all know that we're not going to have all the answers this evening in terms of, all the nitty gritty aspects of the plan. This is something that will have to be fleshed out over time with your assistance and partnership. But we wanted to, get this plan out on the table now so that we can have more public discussion about some of the ideas that will be presented this evening. So if we could do the PowerPoint, that would be helpful.
So Debbie, I'm trying to, am I allowed to share screen? Does somebody need to allow it?
Let me see. Hold on.
No, you
Or
were.
should-
It said you were showing it.
It was, huh? But it wasn't showing up.
Do you have two screens?
No. It's only showing my Zoom screen, right?
It's just black.
It says Ron Hogan has started sharing his screen.
There it
There
is.
you go.
All right.
Yeah, it's probably
All right.
at the speed, Ron. You might, even when you're talking, you might have to be careful with the slides.
Okay.
It might be a delay. Yeah.
You see the first slide though right now, yeah?
Malden Redevelopment Authority, integral part of city for 50 years, correct?
All right, yeah, so there you go, Deb.
Okay, so and Ron and I will probably jump in at different points on this presentation, so just bear with us. Just for a little history, for those of you who may not know this, that the Redevelopment Authority was created in 1958. It actually was created when the then League of Women Voters went to then Mayor Walter Kelleher and asked that he petition and the city petition the General Court to establish the Redevelopment Authority to do planning and economic development activities in the city. We've actually been, and I think, a real integral part of the city for 62 years. So there was an error in the PowerPoint. You know, during this time, we've pretty much acted, as the slide shows, as the city's de facto planning and economic development department for decades. And through this arrangement, you know, we have utilized parking program revenue. As you know, we oversee the off-street parking program in the downtown and the garages and lot right now. And we've also used administrative fees that we're able to take from managing various grants for and on behalf of the city. And we've used these revenues over time to fund salary and operation expense without any cost to the city of Malden. And just, you know, stopping on that point, I think, you know, for 60 years, without being a line item in the city budget, I'm really proud of the work that my team, the team before me, and myself have done for the city when it comes to the various initiatives that are part of our mission. You know, we've done a variety of things as detailed on this slide. You know, for the past couple of time, at least iterations, we've administered and overseen the, you know, open space and recreation planning initiatives. You know, we also, and we're very much involved over the past several months in developing affordable housing policy and strategies alongside the mayor's office. The Redevelopment Authority, you know, I have to, you know, pat myself a little bit in the back, but, you know, I think should credit itself for having brought, you know, I think we were among the first team that started bringing this renewed interest to the Malden River. This agency, I can't take credit for it, it was my predecessor, but brought together the cities of Everett, Malden, and Medford in order to develop River's Edge. And that River's Edge development, you know, brought, you know, made the river at that time front and center. And we're thrilled to still be taking part in various planning initiatives along with several of the councilors and the mayor on wanting to continue to activate that riverfront because it is a premier asset for the community. We also oversee a variety of grant programs that we administer. You know, on the federal side, as you all know, we administer the Community Development Block Grant Fund, which actually became a program in the 70s. So we've been managing that program since the early 1970s. We were responsible for pulling together 8 cities and towns, including Malden and 7 contiguous cities, and going to HUD and accessing critical home funds, which help fund affordable housing initiatives and programs in these 8 cities, including Malden. And we've also, since the early 1990s, I think, have received upwards of $25 million in lead paint abatement grants from the feds that have helped, you know, rid homes of lead paint, which is, you know, another critically important quality of life issue to abate lead, to save on, you know, lead poisoning, et cetera, health issues in the community. We also have written several park grants, state grants, for and on behalf of the city of Malden, which have funded a variety of programs, including, I think we did 2 at Pine Banks Park. We also most recently was involved with, you know, Councilors Kamel and Councilors Winslow in securing a park grant to undertake the, you know, awesome improvements that are now going on at Trafton Park. We've also written a couple of MassWorks grants for the city, and most recently it was one that, although I did work cooperatively with this, with Ron, because there were several iterations of this grant, but we secured upwards of $10 million in order to, you know, achieve the master planning that occurred in this site, and which resulted in, you know, the new city hall in which I'm sitting in this evening, as well as the other mixed-use development that went up around this building. And we've also been instrumental in securing various private and foundational grants, including, you know, grants over the years that helped build the senior center and other park improvements most notably grants from the Baird Foundation, which is a Malden one. At this point, though, and in talking with the mayor, there are challenges on the horizon. The funds that we have had, to tap into are not as plentiful as they have been in years past. And, one of the programs that, has taken a hit largely because of COVID, but I do think it will come back. It will be, though, a timing thing, year, 2 years perhaps, but is the parking program. So, over the last couple of budget seasons with the agency, most recently, the most recent one in which we adopted a budget in July, there's a lot of pulls on the budget. And, right now it just seems that it's not going to be a sustainable financial model to continue on into the future doing the great things that, we want to continue to do for and on behalf of this community. So, there have been all those challenges that we're currently dealing with. It's worked for years, but, the current structure itself also has, challenges that I think, every business and even government agencies, if you will, maybe they're a tad slower, but acknowledge at some point in their lifetime that, they need to look at, their mission and what they're doing as an entity, and maybe think about ways that they either need to evolve, for the benefit of the community, or that they have to start retooling themselves to reposition themselves for the future. And I do think that is the dialogue that we really need to engage in. And this is what this, plan is all about. We've had, as a redevelopment authority over here and, City of Malden over here, although we work side by side on a daily basis, we have in some issues, I think, even maybe trying to undertake a new, repurposed community development and planning agency, will be able to achieve some efficiencies. And those efficiencies could be, dealt with avoiding duplication of efforts. So right now, we have to hire and use grant funds to retain services of outside legal counsel for various, legal advice or documents that we have to enter into as an agency, because we're a quasi-public agency, not a City of Malden agency. We have our own private IT consultant that manages, our server and our IT functions, that perhaps there could be, the avoidance on these types of duplication of efforts, for some cost savings going forward. Insurance, that's a big thing for us. The city's self-insured and is also able in the marketplace to secure other commercial insurance at a much less discount. Our commercial insurance right now to insure the garages and the parking facilities, as well as, the fleet of vehicles for the garages and the properties that we own, is well over $100,000 on an annualized basis. So perhaps there could be some cost, savings. We also have situations where we have business development over here, community development planning here, planning over here. It may be time, as other cities are doing, to try to look at how you bring those all into one umbrella agency, again, for efficiency in the delivery of much needed services to the residents of Malden. The other piece that we have here, we have, a finance office that, they do great work and, and will continue to do great work, but there could be some efficiencies to be had in consolidating some of those functions under one, City of Malden controller's office. So that will be as we move forward in the plan. We'll talk about that a little bit more. So, what the proposal here would be to consolidate the existing Malden Redevelopment Authority along with related city functions into a newly created economic planning and community development department. We would maintain the MRA as a legal entity, and there's reasons for that, which I'll get into if you want, in name, to maintain the powers that are provided to it under the statute known as Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 121B. That was the legislation that created the MRA. It actually is the same legislation that created the Malden Housing Authority. But with it, there's eminent domain powers, not suggesting that they'd ever be used, but it's something that why abolish something if you may want to use those critical powers in the future? It would reposition the current MRA Board of Directors, there are 5 members of the board, to be a newly established Economic Planning and Community Development Board. This board would at times carry out the authority of the MRA Board as allowed for under that legislative act of Chapter 121B. I'd just like to take a minute at this time to acknowledge the 5 members of the MRA Board who are in the audience tonight. They're all Malden residents. They include Bob Foley, Bob Rotundi, Albert Spatafora, Mike Williams, and Sharon Santillo. I cannot ask for a better team of people to have supported me in my role as the executive director. And I do want to advise you that they're all committed to doing the right thing for the city of Malden, and they're all 100% supportive of this plan. The next bullet talks about expanding the newly created and refocused department by adding resources to address transportation planning, and grant writing management. The city has recognized, and it did in a prior budget session, that it needs critical functions of transportation planning, and we've needed a more thoughtful, cohesive approach at grant management and writing and management. We've probably needed it for years, but I think it's getting to the point where, there's a lot of opportunities out there and nobody really in the city, to my knowledge, is the gatekeeper for those opportunities. And there's, definitely resources to be had. Just within the last week, I'm proud to say that one of my employees, the senior planner on staff, wrote grant applications that resulted in maybe $250,000 worth of grants that came into the city that are going to be used for the Malden River Works project. So again, that could only grow, I think, with somebody undertaking that on a day-to-day basis. The proposal would also, again, for efficiency's sake, move the ownership and the management of the parking garages to the city, to be handled by expanding the City of Malden's parking department. The City of Malden, through the leadership of Ron Hogan, that oversees the city parking department, as you know, controls pretty much the on-street parking, and we've been in charge of the off-street. Ron and I have joked off and on and over time that the end user, the parker, really doesn't care who owns the asset. They don't care if they're coming to a MRA-owned garage or a City of Malden-owned garage. They just want to know where can they park, how much it's going to cost, and and be done with it. So perhaps that will allow for some seamless advertising, promotion, and information around a consolidated parking package. The next bullet would be, as I mentioned earlier, would be to consolidate some of the MRA core accounting functions into the city controller's office. And I think, the staff here will be definitely, a nice complement to the city's finance department. We've talked a little bit, Ron and I sitting at the table, how do we get there? Because there are going to be a series of moving parts here that we're going to have some thoughtful conversation about. There would have to be a formalized agreement, memorandum of understanding, for lack of a better word, between the City of Malden and the MRA Board of Directors that would outline the transfer of all assets and liabilities of the MRA to the City of Malden. For instance, we're going to need to address bank loans that we do have on properties, largely for the garages, and garage leases. Those mean parking agreements that have been inked over time dating back to the early 1980s, whereby the agency drastically reduced the monthly parking fee for parking in the off-street assets in order to try to spawn and encourage economic development growth in the downtown. Those worked. Unfortunately, they were inked for 99-year agreements, so they pretty much tie our hands somewhat in terms of an opportunity to increase revenues in terms of those agreements. Again, they were done for a reason. I only wish that they were done for a much lesser period than 99 years, and the board of directors of the agency agree with me on that. The next bullet is that all property would get transferred to the city of Malden. And in another slide, we'll talk about the various properties that the agency owns, and that would include the garages. We also own 2 parking lots, some land, and a building, and that is detailed on a subsequent slide. We would have to create ordinances that would establish the City of Malden Economic Planning and Development Department and outline key elements. One thing in going through this with Ron Hogan, and maybe he would want to weigh in here somewhat, is obviously your ordinances, very clearly spell out positions, steps, etc. So, we're going to have to kind of, encapsulate our employees into that, dynamic of the city ordinances. All existing MRA employees and positions would get established within the city ordinances, and no employee compensation under this proposal or benefits are to be adversely impacted. One thing I'd like to just say right now is I've got a team of great people that I'm extremely proud of. I have 9 hardworking individuals who work for me on a day-to-day basis. They're in here plugging away, doing, great work for and on behalf of the city, whether it's planning, whether it's rebuilding parks, whether it's, advancing affordable housing initiatives. They're workaholics. They love working for the city. And of the 9, half of them live in the city of Malden. And they're all committed to wanting to do the right things for the city. And most of them, if not, I think all of them are on this call tonight, as well as my 5-member board of directors. And so I just wanted that because I sincerely mean that. And I think many of you have interfaced with the team, and I couldn't ask for a better team than the ones I have. It will also include the amendment of the city parking department ordinance to integrate the management of the off-street parking resources into the City of Malden department. And the hope and the goal would be to be able to fold this newly established, reinvigorated community development planning office within the new budget for fiscal year 2021, with the goal of having a new agency, or a new created agency, established by July of 2021. I think we gain a lot by doing this, and and when I take a step back and we've done a lot of thinking about it for the past several months, that I think a strengthened structure that is viable long-term while retaining all the institutional knowledge of these key functions, the city will gain. You'll have a single unified approach to economic planning and community development under one City of Malden department. You'll have a single unified approach to planning and community development under one City of Malden department. And you'll have a single approach to accounting and parking under one City of Malden department. So there's going to be some growing pains here and some refocusing of efforts and activities. There will be an org chart and a subsequent slide here, but what we'd add to this newly created retooled department would be an existing resource that exists in the city today in business development. Proposing the transportation planner, which would have to be a new proposed position in the budget. I can't tell you how critical that position, and I know there's counselors on this call that would say a transportation planner is needed, and the city definitely needs one, and I think it's missing a lot of grant opportunities by not having one as well, and a focused approach to just higher level transportation planning and management. It's different from engineering, it's transportation planning. The other new proposed in the budget would be a grants manager, which I also think is critical. The amount of grants that a person could bring in for that would clearly cover a salary that that person would, maybe command. What would be removed from a new community planning and development office would be parking functions. They would be consolidated under the city. Finance functions would be integrated with the controller's office. And then the home rehab and lead abatement field oversight, the non-administrative functions associated that, the proposal would be to incorporate them within the city's inspectional services department. It would include the transfer of assets. So the city will receive, assets in this, and also liabilities. In subsequent discussions, we can, we'll get into, the dollar amounts associated with both columns here. But at least to give you an idea of the assets that would need to be transferred is the MRA owns the Jackson Street parking garage, the CBD parking garage, the land on which the DPW sits at 356 Commercial Street, the Pearl Street site office from which we've operated a lead paint in a home rehab program for years. That staff has been consolidated now in New City Hall, although they're still doing closings, et cetera, and other real estate activities out of 176 Pearl Street. And right now it currently houses the bulk of the MRA archives. We also own the Main Street and Ferry Street lot that was constructed during the Howard administration next door to the Citizens Bank down on Main Street. And we own that small Mountain Ave lot, not the parking deck, but the lot which is next door to the right of the post office. It's approximately a 25 to 30 space parking lot next to the Malden post office. We also own the Ramsdale Street lot, which we're going to have to do some more research on it. That's a lot that is parking for about 10 to 12 individuals. It was created by the prior director of this agency. And I believe right now, it largely serves as parking for a condominium at the corner of Main Street. And the tenants in that condominium purchase monthly card keys to park in that lot. Again, I'd have to do some more research. It may have been that the parking was provided there in order to satisfy a zoning requirement for parking that was associated with that Main Street housing development. The liabilities that would be transferred would be the pension liabilities of past and present employees, healthcare liability of past and present employees, outstanding loans that the agency has for largely for its parking program, and the existing parking agreements that I indicated that we have with some large users, and some of them just for this call include the Department of Education and Secondary Education and Priority Lane and Associates, which owns a office building at 350 Main Street. There are others smaller than those, but those are the two largest ones. The board, I have to say, particularly this new board has been pretty dogged, largely, through even Mr. Spatafora's help, and insisting that any parking agreements that are written going forward need to be at prevailing market rate and not at drastic discount rate. So that is the policy right now that I follow by the board. And then this is the proposed organizational chart you would have, as I discussed in a previous slide. The board of directors of the MRA, the director, I'm the existing resource, the executive assistant, who is an existing resource in the MRA, housing, which would include the home department, and we also manage a pretty hefty mortgage loan portfolio that would be, and that's all with existing staff, and various rehab and lead reporting on the housing side that needs to be done to HUD, and that's handled with existing MRA staff. The business development position is existing City of Malden staff. Transportation would be the proposed new hire. Economic planning is the existing staff on the MRA. Community development and open space is existing staff on the MRA with an admin assistant as resource. And grant administration is a proposed new addition that, like I said, I think would be good for the city just as a going forward. So I know that was a lot to kind of put forth tonight, but again, I think I wanted to start the conversation. I want to continue to engage with the mayor, Ron, and you folks, and I think it had to get out into a public forum so that I can even begin to have more public discussion with even my board around this proposal. So, I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out, and looking forward, and hopefully we can work together on something that I think is definitely going to lead the city, in years to come.
Let's see, we have a few hands, Debbie, so hold
Okay.
on. Councilor Winslow, you're first.
Yeah, Debbie, thanks for bringing this forward. I know, personally, I've been very much impacted by MRA. We first bought our home through the MRA first-time homebuyer program. That was over 30 years ago. So I really appreciate, and then having worked there myself for a while, and also worked in Somerville and Gloucester Community Development Department. So I think this is something that's been coming. I mean, redevelopment authorities were initially created to really do kind of big, government-led redevelopment projects. That has really changed, and I think more and more communities have shifted to the model that you're proposing here of having a community development planning, economic development department with a redevelopment authority as a tool rather than being the lead. So I think it's something that's been coming. So I'm looking forward to further discussions, and and I really do think you got a great staff, and I want to really make sure that we make a smooth transition, because there's a lot of great things, especially happening in the housing front and on other projects that really we need to have a smooth transition for, and make sure that we're keeping that great staff that's a lot of Malden residents working hard for the city. So thank you for bringing this forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Councilor Linehan, you're next. We still can't hear you. Oh God, didn't we have this issue last week? Oh geez. Do you think you could pause? Did we lose her altogether? Did she just go away? Okay. We'll come back to her. Maybe she should dial in so we can hear her. Okay, who is next? Councilor Spatafora, you're next. I can't hear you either. You're muted.
Okay, I'm on mute. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Debbie Burke. First thing I would say is I would echo Council Winslow's thought process in terms of it is kind of the next evolution of the authority. I think a well thought out deck. Certainly, there's a plan in place. The other thing I would say is what's refreshing is it sounds like the mission of the MRA is not changing, but the organization or the business sense of it is changing to make it continue to be a valid resource for the future generations of Malden. So it's an important leap. And I know it was something that was talked about prior in this administration many years ago. And while some of the council members were there and some were not, including myself, I think having this plan really resonates with some of the councils who are here, because now it is just not talking about what's going to happen. It's how it's going to be happening. So I'll steal Councilor Crow's famous phrase, and the devil's in the details. And we know this is only step one, but it's refreshing to see kind of already the side-by-side realignment. What are you guys thinking in terms of shifting resources and expenses in any type of certainly future cost to the city? So there is certainly going to be a long discussion in that. And the final thing I would say, because I don't want to take up all the time, because I'm sure every council want to speak on this, is I would give you and the board an immense amount of credit, because anytime you have to start looking to change or alter any organization that's been around, almost 40 years, it's probably not easy, right? Especially as now in charge of this, and you've professionally grown up in there, and to take this step, which is, I'm not saying abolishing it, but it's certainly redefining it and putting it in a smaller role in terms of perspective, but just leaving that legal authority there. So it takes courage to do it now. Certainly you could have waited till later on and passed the baton or kicked the can, as they say, and let somebody else deal with it. But to take this on now and having the ability to work with the council in the mayor's office to put things in the right spot, again, I can't stress enough how of a strong leadership role that takes from you and certainly the board. Because, like I said, you didn't have to do this now, but you did have to do it. So I think that's why I'm impressed by it, and I look forward to probably the many discussions as well as public input. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafaro. We're going to go back to Councilor Linehan and see if we can hear her now.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me?
We
Yep.
can, yes, perfect.
Okay, I'm not going to mute again. I don't know what's going on, but if I lose it again, I'll just call in. So Debbie, thank you. That was a great presentation. Sounds like I'm going to echo what some of my colleagues have said, which is just to obviously thank you for all the work you've done, and also just, recognizing that things are changing and it's time to pivot and evolve. I know that takes a strong leader to do that and to, approach it before it gets to the point where you really have no choice. Obviously I've been on your board. I know a lot about the MRA and the finances and everything and all the programming. And I think the community probably doesn't appreciate the full breadth of what you and your staff really do, particularly during COVID. I think about what we would have done without a lot of your whole team, standing up an eviction program, the rental assistance. It's been evident to me how hard all of them are working, and I don't know what we would have done without that staff, to be honest. So I'm glad that you are thinking about, where do all of those pieces, those moving pieces fit in? How do we retain the staff, and really come up with an org chart that makes sense and that is, adaptable and something that we can keep evolving. So I guess in that spirit, my questions have to do a little bit with the process from here on out. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, will there be some sort of public engagement process to get community input, or just to educate the community on what's going on, or, even things like maybe doing strategic planning around how do you make sure some of the titles and the focuses that you're coming up with are in alignment with the planning field and just what we want to accomplish, and making sure that what you hope to do, what the city wants to do, is reflected in the hiring. I mean, I can't think of anything we need more probably than a transportation planner and a grant writer. I think those will be long overdue. Maybe someone to oversee housing, but we can cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think, in thinking of how all those pieces fit together, how are you thinking about that public input side, the growth of this new entity, and how it will fit in with how the city's growing and what we want it to do to be adaptable moving forward, and just, I guess, sort of succession planning for you. I mean, you have all this institutional knowledge and what seems to me like a very young and very motivated and dynamic staff. But I'm thinking about the long term of how do you grow, how do you adapt and continue to grow and make sure that you're bringing in people while also being mindful of sort of what the long horizon is.
Those are good questions, Amanda. I'm certainly not averse to a community engagement process. And perhaps it could be kind of a twofer. We're going to have to do a lot of meetings here with the ordinance committee of the city council, as well as the finance committee of the city council. Those are all public meetings. There's even a public hearing at some point on the city budget, right? So if those, kind of discussions, get folded in through public input in those processes, I think that would be, a prudent use of time. I will say that this plan probably isn't something that we want to push off for a couple of years. I do think we're at a junction now that's critical in terms of, from a financial perspective, that we should definitely start thinking about the restructuring. But, in terms of, succession planning or strategic planning, those are all, I think solid recommendations, and perhaps those are things that, are launched, when a new department is created. But like I said, I think the public could still have some input into the plan during an engagement process with the many, many meetings we're going to have to do with you folks. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my initial reaction to it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, planning is all about community engagement, right? So I think it would be great to adapt some of that and bring some of that in, knowing that we don't have all the answers and that it's going to be a work in
Right.
progress. And as you said, that you don't want to slow it down. I definitely didn't want to give that impression. I did just have two other quick questions. One is, I'm curious where our current city planner and planning board fits into this, if at all. And then I also wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the garage, the liability, sort of like the repairs that are needed. What do we need to get those up to a state of, I'll say good repair, but also, you know, they need a little bit of love to get into sort of a modern forward thinking parking strategy, right?
Right. Well, let's take the garages first. They suffer from deferred maintenance, I guess is a way of initially answering you. There was, prior to my assuming the directorship of the agency in 2014, I worked alongside with, you know, the controller here of this agency, who's, you know, very bright and smart, and who encouraged me actually to start setting aside some money, some of that parking revenue, for reserve for replacement, to start investing in assets that we had not done. And again, sadly, you know, we kind of kicked the can on that for many years, and you know, and paying the price a little bit on that. The CBD garage probably right now is the one that, you know, requires the most work. We did have a structural engineering analysis done of that garage, and it needs, you know, several $1 million worth of work. The agency at the moment just got news today, as a matter of fact, that it is qualified for a bank loan. Their bank committee approved it today. That would maybe allow us to undertake the first $3 million worth of repair in that facility. It's safe, it's stable. I've had structural engineers' eyes on it, but they need to start now doing, you know, some concrete repairs and whatnot. And I actually have a structural engineer walk through, you know, both of the facilities on a regular basis. The second garage that would probably need, that's kind of in the pecking order of needing repairs, is the Mountain Ave parking deck, which is a building that's owned by the city of Malden, actually, but we administer that deck. It's at the corner of Mountain Ave and Summer Street, you know, across from where the courthouse was. That facility needs some, you know, stabilizing of the upper deck, you know, over the lower deck. We have added a shoring system in there so that facility is also safe, but those are the ones that are going to need some repairs. A lot of the other things are cosmetic in nature. Elevators are sorely needed in both facilities, CBD and Jackson. And then the other thing that, you know, has been on the to-do list, but quite frankly, not the funds to do it, is to, you know, automate those garages so that they're, you know, into like the year 2020 or maybe at least the year 2018 at this point. You know, but I can, you know, going forward with the discussion, happy to share more of the financials and the reports that I have to, you know, give you a more, you know, definitive, you know, financial, you know, analysis of those needs in the facilities. But they definitely need some investment. As to your prior question about the planning activities, this plan right now does talk about, we have a senior planner on staff, as well as, you know, the proposal to hire a transportation planner. You know, whether or not this should then consider merging the planning board, which is kind of another entity unto itself, with the existing city planner, is something that, you know, perhaps should be, you know, up for conversation with your body. But, you know, the existing planner pretty much is a day-to-day staff person for the planning board. So I don't know, you know, that's something that, you know, we should probably all talk about, including that board, as to whether or not, you know, it makes sense to house all those activities under one roof. But right now, that plan does not contemplate that activity, at least at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I think
You're
that
welcome.
it makes sense. I think you're right. It could be something that's maybe for a longer conversation down the line. And
Mhm.
I definitely think you know, in my years being on your board, I know it always felt like the parking stuff, it was sort of this aside, right? Like that should be its own kind of integrated strategic approach for the city. So I do
Right.
think that makes a lot of sense. And I guess I would just urge us to keep thinking of it as something that, you know, we need to think about what the goals are for what the parking wants to achieve for our economic development mission or aim for the city. You know, I think obviously COVID has put a wrench in all of that, but I do want to just make sure that we're thinking about it in a really strategic way and looking at the full picture from the on-street to off-street parking, you know, and like you said, the automation I think will be a big piece of that. So I think that's potentially a really good move for down the line. I could come up with questions all night, but I'll give others a chance to ask a few. Thank you for answering all of those.
Thanks, Counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Linehan. Councilor O'Malley, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Burke, for appearing before us. I really appreciate what you've presented. I know I'm personally very excited for this. I think it's a very bold vision for the future, and it does show the leadership that you are dedicated to and how well you're able to make sure that you can bring all these parties together and make something like this possible. A lot of the questions that I had have already been answered pretty concisely. So I'm just really looking forward to the next steps on this. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Is this something that we would like to ideally finish within the next year? You did mention some financial challenges that we're facing specifically related to coronavirus and parking revenues. What would be the ideal time frame?
Well, Counselor, thank you for your kind remarks, but the goal here would be to try to get this done and achieved so that there's a new entity in place July 1 of 2021.
Perfect.
Yeah, we've kind of pushed the ball, you know what I mean, out for maybe as long or, you know, that we really should be. So, I mean, that would be my hope, that we could work collaboratively together, you know, and see that achieved by that time frame.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Condon, you're next.
Thank you. This is something that's been talked about since probably 50 years, but no one's had the aggressive attitude to move it forward. So thank you, Debbie, for your diligence in this matter. These parking agreements, and I know some of them we have so many years on them.
Right.
Is there any kind of chance of renegotiating these agreements? Is there any willingness on the part of, say, 350 Main Street to look at it?
Right. You bring up an interesting question, Counselor, and it's one that Amanda, who used to sit on the board and the current board, you know, asked a lot about. You know, when I first took over, we had, you know, lawyers put their eyes on it, and they felt that they were legally binding agreements that cannot be broken, and it is what it is. And I have thought about revisiting, say, the 350 Main Street owner, who's, you know, very receptive property owner and knows the value that that garage has to his property. Although what I would say in terms of that property owner is that even during COVID, while he has a call on up to 500 parking spaces in the CBD garage, I think he's currently using, well, before COVID, maybe close to the 500. He is still paying, I think as of last month, he's still paying, even though the reduced rate, like 450 of those spaces. So, and those cars aren't there. So, you know, we're still benefiting from, albeit reduced parking revenue from him, but he hasn't turned his back on that agreement either. But I do think it warrants a much more detailed roll up your sleeve discussion, because the Department of Ed agreement is written a tad differently. They're all written differently. They all have different language nuances. They had 400 spaces that they were paying for. I think I got latest parking numbers from SP Plus, and I don't know, it might be 10 or 20 that they're paying for because everybody else is home doing remote. And their agreement does nowhere require that they pay for those 320, but yet it seems kind of foolish, but yet I got to sit here. I have to sit here, you know, for a year or two till they come back and start parking again. So I'm thinking that kind of out loud with you, Paul, whether or not, if that's grounds for breaking that type of agreement, or do I have to sit here and not, for 2 years waiting for them to come back? So solid, great questions. I unfortunately, I don't have all the answers to it right now.
I think it's going to really be an aggressive approach to be able to get it done by July 1st. Really, it's always been either the city resists doing this, because I can remember past councilors saying we should combine these agencies.
Right.
Really, you deserve a great deal of credit. We also have to understand, as a city council, people resist change,
Right.
for sure. This is a tremendous, tremendous change in the way we're going to operate as a community. And there's so much talent up in that MRA office, particularly with grants out there,
Right.
that we can take advantage of as a community. And, to incorporate people into the city controller's office certainly would take some of the pressure off of him. Maybe utilize people as an auditing department, set something like that up. So I'm excited about this. We have to be patient, for sure, but this is going to go down as one of the great things done by this community. And congratulations to Gary and his staff to be willing to take something like this on. And I've worked under 4 mayors, and they've all been great people. No one has been willing to take something like this on, and they deserve a lot of credit, and so does your board. So thank you.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. When I did approach the mayor about this, he couldn't have been, any more thoughtful, nice, supportive. And I said, give me some guidance here. And, he said, look, Debbie, thanks for letting me know. I really appreciate it. Start working with Ron Hogan and see what the two of you can come up with in terms of a roadmap. But I have to tell you, there was one day in July. He couldn't have been a better friend to me. So it was much appreciated.
Okay, we have Councilor Murphy, you're next.
Thank you, Council President. It's always tough going in the middle of the act after so many things have been said, everything which I agreed with. But I'm going to kind of maybe just go dovetail a little bit into what Councilor Conan was speaking about. And, having been on the council for a while, I too remember a number of instances where, folks have said, the MRA should be under, the city of Malden. And it was just more of a tug of war. There was never any, let's work at this together. It was just more statements about, okay, well, we want to do that. We want to take over those garages. There was never any, working together cohesively. And I really want to thank, Director Burke for just what she said. She approached the mayor. She saw the vision in this, the need for this, and she went to the city to talk about it. I'm sure with her board's approval. So I, want to thank them also, because I know they put a lot of time and effort into the MRA. So this is where we need to go. But because Deborah has done that, or excuse me, Ms. Burke has done that, basically we're talking about, and I think Councilor Conan touched on this, a merger and acquisition. And with any merger and acquisition in the public, the group that's acquired, there's always a lot of trepidation. The employees are scared. They're wondering what their future is going to look like. And I think we need to be extremely sensitive to all of the people who have put the time and effort into the MRA to assure them that we value them and that we're going to work with them and that we're going to make sure that they land in a spot that they're happy with and able to continue their career with the city of Malden. So, Mrs. Burke, thank you so much for, bringing this to us. I think we all really appreciate what you and your board have done. We're willing to work with you, and we will look forward to seeing how this moves forward. But Councilor Spatafora said, Councilor Crowe always says, the devil's in the details, and I agree with Councilor Condon that July 2021 is a very aggressive timetable for something like this. So, let's be patient and see how we move forward with this, and open to, maybe some changes that need to be made along the way. So thank you again.
Thanks, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Councilor Crowe, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't want to belabor all everybody else said. Because clearly a lot of thought has gone into this, and it's been something I think that you've probably been thinking about for quite a while. I've heard it even prior to being on the council about, having merges. So, and I think this is just really the first step in acknowledging, that there is going to be a lot of growing pains and a lot of discussions, and, sort of figure out how really everything works when the rubber hits the road. So I look forward to those conversations. I do think it's an aggressive timeline, but I think we need to really focus in and get this done as soon as we can. So thank you for all your hard work, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Crowe. Councilor Camille.
So, Ms. Burke, thank you very much. I know this was probably a difficult presentation to give, and I think you did an amazing job and delivered a lot of information very concisely, very straightforward, and I want to thank you for that. So if you just humor me in just a little bit of a recap and slash maybe not so much questions for now, just things, just kind of like a laundry list of little things I'm thinking of that we want to make sure we get into the process when we meet between now and getting prepped for July 2021. So retaining the mission, and together with that, as Councilor Murphy alluded to a bit there, retaining the staff that is there is the plan, correct?
Yes.
And then bolstering that with transportation planner and grant writer, which is great. Retaining revenue, of course, like we've just heard, there's some, just like this hits with revenue everywhere, hits to that revenue due to COVID, but hopefully those will bounce back. Less our debt obligations and whatever agreements we have in terms of running the garages.
Right.
And then I think the big thing that's going to be a lot of, I don't want to say guesswork. It's going to take a lot of basically financial modeling and doing our best to prognosticate here. We'll have two things that counteract, right? Savings and efficiencies. And you mentioned things like the health insurance, and then counteracting that with some of those added staff, right? New positions. And then the hit to the revenue, which is something you would have had to deal with anyway as an entity. And I think that's important for a lot of people to remember. All of these expenses and revenue and all the assets and liabilities are being transferred. I mean, these things would already exist, and had this not come up, we would be having probably a much more difficult conversation about, what assets we can and can't keep in terms of moving forward. So it's good that we are taking action now. So another thing we might want to get involved is person we want to get involved is maybe our treasurer, and look at if there's any, God, I was going to get real corporate for a second and say synergies. Oh my God, I hit myself for that. Just to see if there's any opportunities in terms of financing, refinancing, in terms of debt. Is there any way to kind of combine debt or look at that? I would imagine most of the debt is secured debt. But anyways, and I think the one question I do have, maybe we don't have an answer for it now. I think Councilor Linehan alluded to it, and maybe you answered it, maybe you didn't. I don't remember. Is would the city planner sort of stay where she is, or would that shift over? I think that's something we might want to talk about. We might not have that answer now. Sorry, one more second. I have a note here. I can't read in my own handwriting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, with the assets, the garage assets, something we might want to consider as well. Would they fall under the responsibility of our public facilities? So would Eric Rubin have to sort of be part of that situation, or at least someone oversee that situation?
Okay.
Maybe something we want to consider. And then in terms of a public process, obviously you mentioned it. We'll work together. There'll be finance and ordinance meetings, but let's make sure we front load that. Maybe we'll have maybe there'll be an opportunity even before those nitty gritty meetings to have something just to let our community kind of understand, because there's a lot of like inside baseball to this. So folks should kind of understand what's happening. I don't know if there was a question there. I'm sorry. I know there was a laundry list of just thoughts and me reading my notes. I'll just give you an opportunity if there's anything that comes to your mind. If not, let's just, that'll at least be in the minutes, which will be easier to read than my own handwriting.
Right. No, I made note of your statements, Council Kamel. So yeah, I think as we go through the process, we can flesh out some answers. I don't know that I have them all tonight. I think your idea about getting the treasurer in on whether we could refi debt. I did the loan that we made, that we were approved today for the bank. Obviously, there's paperwork that has to be signed, but I have been advised by the bank that, there'd be no prepayment penalties if the city were to choose in the future to pay it off. So that's one piece I do know.
Yeah, great. So we'll take that. We'll maybe those ideas can serve as the beginning of a structure and how we kind of move forward with the next step.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Councilor Di Maria, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam Executive Director, Debbie Burke. Great presentation. I think, going in last with all the discussion, it sounds like you hit a home run tonight. It does, there are a couple of words that come to mind. One is proactive. So I think this whole presentation, and we tried it 5 years ago and it didn't work, but I think we've gathered speed and gathered knowledge along the way. Second word that comes to mind, because I lived through the merger with Delta Airlines and Northwest Airlines, and the most important thing with that merge was communication. So communication with the present employees, communication with our community, with, of course, my fellow counselors and myself, treasurer's office, all the people that we need to have buy-in on this. So I'm sure you know that already, so I'm probably preaching to the choir, but the other thing that I think would be really helpful as we move forward is a somewhat of a balance sheet. You do have, what is owned and what you have acquired, but I think maybe appraisals, evaluations of what the city is actually going to now merge with and inherit some per se, because I think, having appraisers and knowing what we're getting, and then knowing, the maintenance that is actually it's almost like when you buy something, you gotta, if it's a great deal, you still have to know, well, how much money do I have to put into this to make this work? So, but I'm sure your people know that, and I really value, it takes a leader to see to have the foresight to look forward thinking, moving Malden forward, and certainly you've proven that. And the only other thing that I do want to say is, as we move forward with new hires, developing this new department, I do hope we always consider the diversity of our community as we move forward. So that's it. I have no questions. So just a bunch of blah, blah, blah. But thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Counselor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Anderson, you're next. You are muted, Councilor Anderson. We can't hear you.
There we go.
There you go.
Following all the great questions that preceded my speaking, answered the questions that I had. So I guess I just want to make a statement about how I've felt that the Redevelopment Authority has always been a close and positive partner right along with all of the things that have gone on in the city of Malden. They may have been two separate entities, but I've always seen them as like two horses pulling the wagon in the same direction. And that compliment goes to this executive director and others that were before her, along with the boards that have moved Malden forward. So this is a great presentation that you've made this evening. The devil is in the detail, as we all know. So we've got a lot to look at, a lot of balancing and acquisition and mergering, as Councilor Murphy has mentioned, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Counselor Anderson.
Thank you. Councilor Spatafora for the second time.
Thank you, Madam President. I would be remiss, though, if I think we all spoke, and certainly a large part of this process has been the board, the MRA board, and certainly Ms. Debbie Burke in terms of taking it here. But I think we all know, and it was mentioned earlier, that there's an individual that also contributed, and nobody thanked them. So I figured I would publicly. You know, we've talked about organizational design and financial engineering, and probably some rules and regulations and creating laws. But I know he sent it to us earlier, but Mr. Ron Hogan is part of this equation is not only having the MRA, but also the entity to kind of merge it too. And I'm sure there'll be many people involved, but I think Ron has certainly been somebody who has helped create this deck and helped engineer this in a way that seems to be, knock on wood, a smooth transition. So along with Debbie Burke, the executive director, and certainly the board of the MRA, I do want to recognize Mr. Ron Hogan for his work here. And we know what he's done with the parking department, and he needs to be part of this equation. And I look forward to working with all parties involved. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafora. Mr. Hogan, do you have anything that you would like to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is I think that Debbie and I both, Debbie and I have spent an awful lot of time together over the last couple of months, just quite frankly, talking through all this and trying to get to the point of being able to have an intelligent dialogue, tonight with you all to lay the foundation for, what is a lot of work to come, right? I think we viewed this as being similar to some other things that we've done, like trash, for example, where we introduced the topic, give you all a chance to digest it, throw a few things for us to think about out, and then get the real work done within the committees that would ultimately have to entertain the actual papers that would support this. So I certainly think we've accomplished that objective tonight in the sense that it's got everybody thinking about it. We've got some things that we know are at the top of your mind, and now the real work begins. Debbie, as much as it feels like, I've spent more time with you than I wanted to, I think it's going to be more from here. So, that was sort of the goal here tonight, and I do feel like we're on our way. So it's been a good conversation.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Debbie, for the presentation. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Counselor.
Have a nice evening.
You too. Do I stay in here because I'm part of the Broadway presentation, or should I call in the other one?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
City Clerk, next order of business.
Number 2 is the BSC group to present the Broadway Route 99 corridor framework plan to the Malden City Council. Evan Spatrini is from the MRAs here, along with Jeff Basser and Heather Gould from the BSC group.
Good evening, Evan. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for having us here tonight. I hope we're not too tired of talking about planning. Most of you know me. I'm Evan Spatrini. I'm the senior planner for the MRA. So we're talking about the Broadway corridor framework plan that we have recently completed. We're going to present that to you tonight. The Broadway plan was funded by the Massachusetts Gaming Commission through the Community Mitigation Fund. At the direction of Mayor Christensen, we formed an internal working group made up of myself, Debbie Burke, Kevin Duffy, and Michelle Romero. We've been working with BSC Group on this plan for just about a year now, and we're very excited to share it with you tonight. I'd like to thank Heather Gould and Jeff Fasser from BSC for all of the work that they've done over the last year. And now I'll turn it over to them to present the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. It is a pleasure to be here before you. I'm going to share my screen for our presentation. Okay, and we can get underway. So as you'll see, we are before you to talk about the Broadway Route 99 corridor. And as a summary of our efforts, there were a number of tasks that we were responsible for, mainly being analyzing existing conditions, listening to the community, creating recommendations and an action plan, something that was achievable and feasible, and coming up with a number of development scenarios. As you'll see on this image here, we looked at 3 different areas of the corridor. We broke out the corridor into these sub areas, and we talked to the community about the corridor overall, but also within the different sub areas, because they all have different opportunities and they all have different conditions, and they all have a way to be linked from one to the other in a way that makes it consistent, but also shows that they have individual characters and traits that are important to each sub area. In terms of our existing conditions analysis, we looked at a number of different variables. We walked the corridor, we took observations of every property within the corridor and came up with a sheet as an example of this one. We looked at all of the infrastructure and the public realm, looking at streets, sidewalks, traffic circulation, travel lanes, bus stops, where there is public transportation service, where there are gaps in that service, where there are trees, there's landscaping, where the parking's located, walkability overall, ADA compliance, pretty much anything and everything you could see out there, we looked at and documented. We had a public participation process. It consisted of a community meeting. It also included one-on-one interviews with property and business owners along the corridor, and it included an online survey. That online survey generated approximately 145 responses, and that online survey also asked similar questions that were asked at the community meeting. The community meeting consisted of a presentation, and then it had breakout tables where we were able to talk to the participants about the different sub areas and what they felt were the perceived strengths and weaknesses throughout the corridor, things they'd like to see changed, what they would like to see there that's missing, what they would like to see go away in terms of certain things that maybe they felt didn't belong where they were located, and the like. In terms of our findings, traffic speeding and a lack of upkeep in the neighborhood really contributed to a negative perception of the corridor. In terms of commercial development, there are at least 8 different retail commercial centers within 5 miles of Broadway Plaza, drawing from its primary trade area, posing a challenge to those businesses that are located within the corridor. There is an unmet demand and need for housing in Malden, understanding that Malden Center is presently the priority focus in terms of housing development. Present zoning does not promote vibrant mixed-use urban development. In fact, the present zoning really helps to contribute to the suburban nature of that corridor as it exists currently, talking about parking lots that are abutting the street, with buildings set back far behind, looking at a lack of connectivity in terms of sidewalks and gaps in the sidewalks, looking at pedestrian walkability. Those challenges exist in the corridor and are something that needs to be overcome in terms of promoting more of that mixed-use urban compact development that you would see in a city. There are many smaller parcels that would need to be assembled for larger scale development. So there is an opportunity there in terms of moving forward with any kind of larger scale development in the future. The corridor does suffer from a lack of pedestrian, bicycle, and bus accommodation, as well as open space. Looking at the bus service along that corridor, there is a gap of approximately 0.3 of a mile between one stop to another where there is no bus service. So one would not be able to travel north-south along the corridor from the Melrose line to the Everett line without getting off of a bus and having to walk that distance, or traveling into Malden Center and coming back the other way. And then finally, Route 99 Broadway from the Melrose line to approximately Baird Street, Truman Drive is a state highway layout designation. So any improvements to that corridor, that stretch of the corridor, would require coordination with Mass DOT. Looking at the vision statement, this is a summary of what we put forth in the report that we created. But the Broadway corridor evolves as a mixed-use destination filled with independently owned retail shops and restaurants. It becomes greener and safer, reduced traffic congestion, better traffic circulation, and really has a defined streetscape design. It's recognized as a unified urban compact mixed-use commercial corridor filled with character and a sense of place. And then looking to break it out even further, since the sub-areas do have their own differences, the northern sub-area would consist of commercial uses, primarily office, manufacturing, and large-scale retail. The middle sub-area would remain primarily residential with neighborhood mixed-use development at key intersections, contributing to that neighborhood commercial center feel. The southern sub-area would consist of mixed-use commercial and residential with smaller scale, locally owned retail and commercial uses, with the exception of Broadway Plaza. That would become a lifestyle center with dining, entertainment, and shopping, complemented by attractive landscaping, community gathering areas, and integrated residential, hotel, and office space. In terms of goals for the framework plan, really looked at a number of things, using zoning as a tool to guide sound land use and economic growth, making transportation improvements to help create a true multimodal corridor, increasing the use of public transportation by offering better connections and service along the corridor, creating an enjoyable walkable corridor for residents to shop locally by providing green public gathering spaces and implementing an aesthetically pleasing landscape. One of the things we heard at the community meeting and through the online survey was that residents wanted Broadway to be a destination for independent small businesses. They liked the fact that they were able to drive to larger commercial centers, but they really felt that the corridor would do well with a bookstore and a coffee shop and breakfast places in abundance, and not just one that might be located here or there or has a drive-through, so that you can just, stop on by, but they want somewhere to sit and enjoy the environment that they're in. And that was something that was very much lacking in terms of their opinion of the corridor. Along with that, it's really one of the goals was to foster a business-friendly environment that provides those opportunities. And lastly, to forge a relationship with Encore Boston Harbor to enhance business opportunities for Malden-based vendors, particularly those that are within proximity of the Broadway corridor. And in looking at our recommendations and implementation and funding, knowing that this is really an economic development plan and a land use plan, it's hard to separate out that transportation is intrinsically linked. So in looking at the recommendations, it may seem like there's an overabundance of transportation recommended actions within this plan, but it's because they're crucial and critical to really setting up the basis for sound economic growth. So some of the recommendations, not to get into too much detail because there is a lot of detail in them, and we do break it out into different phases, whether it's a short-term, a midterm, or a long-term goal. We show who the responsible parties are and look at actually possible funding sources to help complete those actions. Zoning, really looking at the zoning districts. There's 5 along the corridor right now, looking at reductions in that districts and dimensional requirements, looking at allowed uses and how the land uses coexist together and complement each other. In terms of transportation, conducting a transportation analysis of the corridor and looking at traffic related changes, sidewalks, complete streets, the northern strand crossing and upgrades to that crossing, collaboration with the MBTA in terms of that north-south service, better signage and amenities for riders. In terms of economic development, business retention, attraction, and support for small businesses, business assistance programs, financing such as storefront improvement programs or microloans. Streamlined permitting, collaborating with workforce development and training partners and other business groups. In terms of public realm improvements, bike lanes, lighting, walkability, balancing between pedestrians and cyclists and motor vehicles in the physical environment. And then looking at project area sustainability, green infrastructure, street trees. It gets hot when you're walking along that corridor in the summer and there's very little shade, landscaping buffers and opportunities for open space. And moving forward on those recommendations and implementation and trying to help to show a vision, we came up with a number of different development scenarios. Proposed concept number 1 relates to Broadway Plaza. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jeff Vassar, to give you a little bit more detail about these.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you for having us here tonight to explain this plan to you. So I'm going to explain 3 concepts that we developed, one for the Broadway Plaza area, one for the middle section of the corridor where there's a bend in the road now, and we all probably can recognize it as the bend where we have the guardrails and there's some traffic concerns there. And then the northern area close to the Melrose line. So this first plan we're looking at here is the Broadway Plaza area. And what we wanted to do in generating these plans was to take the recommendations from the report and put them onto a conceptual illustrative plan to help illustrate some of the design principles and recommendations that are in the corridor. So on this plan here, again, it's the larger Broadway Plaza is to the upper part of Broadway. Broadway runs through the middle of this diagram, and to the south are some parcels that we showed what could happen there if some of those parcels, smaller parcels, were combined into 1 or 2 larger parcels, as again, Heather mentioned earlier. So what you can see on here with the pink and purple structures, those are indication of building footprints, is bringing new buildings up along the street so that as you're traveling along the corridor, either driving, biking, walking, the visual character of the corridor is improved by having the uses and buildings closer to the roadway with parking located behind or beside these new buildings. Adding on-street parking where possible, adding street trees where possible. And during the course of generating these options, we started to experience the challenges with COVID. We had already identified the idea of adding outdoor gathering spaces that would be associated with retail uses or residential uses or even office uses. And then once COVID hit, we realized how important those spaces may be, not only currently, but in the future. We think people are going to start to realize that there is a need to, or desire to be outside more, to eat, to gather, to read, whatever. So we're showing green space here in areas associated with building uses so that customers and clients and workers could enjoy those spaces also. These plans have been color coded. There's a legend with each one of these diagrams that talks about the different proposed uses in this area. And one point I want to make is that this is a concept. We are not saying this is how these areas should be developed. These concepts were prepared to show how the design principles could be applied to areas such as this, and showing a combination of uses and even to the detail of calculating the square footage of each of these uses and how much parking may be necessary for these. We wanted to make this realistic so that if a property owner or developer is talking to the city the redevelopment authority or what they may become in the future, that the redevelopment authority is able to show plans that are realistic. Parking demand is going to decrease. Part of the recommendations in the report is also having shared parking so that daytime uses where people may leave towards the end of the day, their parking could be shared with evening uses of restaurants and stores, for example. And then also in this plan, we've also, in addition to showing how the roadway would be treated with additional street trees, wider sidewalks where possible, there's also a yellow dashed line here showing kind of off-road pedestrian and bike circulation that would connect the neighborhoods to these, in this case, this retail area, as well as the corridor, so that abutting residential neighborhoods would have more comfortable ways to walk to the corridor to use the new businesses or visit new offices there or whatever it may be, so that it's not necessary to drive there and drive from one location to another. Happy to come back to these and talk in more detail. We thought it was important to illustrate that. And then for each of the areas, we also did a what we call a photo simulation showing what is there now. So on the upper smaller photo, that's the existing conditions of Broadway just north of the plaza area with a cemetery on the right side of this image. And then the photo simulation below shows that same area with wider sidewalks on both sides, on-street parking, bike lanes, etc. Again, this is intended to illustrate an example of what could happen. Heather mentioned that there would need to be a traffic study and the actual details of this would be worked out, but a traffic planner did work with us on this plan, a BSC traffic engineer, and he felt confident that these types of improvements were appropriate. They're not wishful, they are actually realistic improvements that could be made along the corridor. Looking at a different area, we then went to the middle of the corridor. Again, this area where there's this kind of dogleg in the roadway, and to the east side, which would be the lower side of the roadway along this diagram, I'm sure as a lot of you know, there is a rock face there, ledge that's been exposed over the years. And the roadway is very wide there. And we thought this was an area where we could illustrate how where areas like this exist and there's wider areas for the pedestrian, that along the side of the roadway itself, the pavement could be narrowed where it is in excess. In this area, there wouldn't be a need for parking along this side of the roadway because it's rock and a steep slope up. So there's no adjacent uses in some of this space. And this could become not only a comfortable sidewalk walking area, but almost like a small linear park in this area where there'd be places where people could sit, socialize. If people were biking along the corridor, they could pull off here and rest, park their bike, etc. And also by reducing the roadway width, adding street trees and what we call traffic calming measures, it would make this a safer area, safer section of the roadway. And then the last area moving north, oh, I'm sorry, here's a graphic of that. Again, photo simulation. You can see on the top, a lot of pavement there, and it's not the most attractive area, just putting it out there bluntly. But on the bottom, you can see how with narrowing pavement, adding greenery, making it a more comfortable place to walk, a safer place to drive, really adds much greater visual appeal to this part of the corridor. And moving north up towards Melrose, it was an area where, there are some larger parcels and larger uses here, but they're also mixed in with that some smaller parcels. And the idea here was showing that in contrast to the large Broadway Plaza area, then even an area like this where there were some smaller parcels, they could be combined for potential new development that's more consistent with the vision. And you can see it on the area Heather is circling there. Again, bringing buildings up to the street, parking beside and behind the buildings. Again, wider sidewalks, on-street parking. And one thing I should mention here, and it would happen in numerous places along the corridor, there are a lot of very wide curb cuts for vehicles to pull off the road, to get into parking lots, into businesses. And if we really want the balance of vehicular traffic as well as comfortable pedestrian traffic, some of those curb cuts could be narrowed and still service the abutting business. And in this case here, we're showing how the new parking area behind the purple and pink buildings that are proposed new buildings, that parking lot could actually have access to the adjacent parking lot. So there could be shared parking between the two uses there, one existing and one new, and cars could travel back and forth between the two parking areas without having to go back out onto Broadway. So it's an example, another example of a treatment that could be employed to help shared parking become much more efficient and effective. And again, if you zoom in on this, again, before and after, and I think this is really a good example of how, as you see on the existing photo, you've got the parking lot up along the street. You don't even really have a curb line there. Yeah, there are bumpers in the parking lot to define where the parking spaces are, but it's just like one big curb cut if those bumpers weren't there. And then below showing how that area could be improved. Again, pulling buildings up to the street, on-street parking, all the different design principles I mentioned previously. I think that was it. And Heather and I are happy to answer any questions. Heather was the project manager, so I'll put the pressure on her, but also say, you know, probably best to start directing your questions towards her, but we were both well involved with this in all the meetings, so we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you. First up is Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, this is certainly an area of the city that is worthy of rethinking here. And, you know, I always made the comments at the meeting is that, you know, it's sort of, I'd like to sort of draw what you see in Everett along Broadway up into Malden. And that's sort of the general concept here. So, so I think there's a lot of opportunity here to make it that more urban feel with buildings along the route. And so it's great to see more green infrastructure and stuff like that. The one comment I have is that I know I made some comments about the lack of a consistent bus service along here. And that's something I think I would like to see, you know, as we go forward. Everett's been very successful with their, you know, morning bus lanes, and that's made those, made that service very much more efficient. So that's just one of the things I think, and that would create a lot more of the opportunities for the city to get the money to do the type of infrastructure on the road that would really make this happen. So, but you know, it's exciting to really kind of rethink areas of, you know, there was a lot of effort, you know, over the past 50 years to do highway business districts, but you can see as that evolved, it's, you know, it's not a very attractive neighborhood in other ways. So it's trying to create that balance between a more attractive urban stretch that does have ability for you know, parking as well. So I think it's, you know, it's a good start. And I guess my one question is, I don't know how we follow up on here. I guess our new planning and economic development department would have to take on, but this is exactly the type of thing. We do this plan, and having a department that could then take this plan and plug it right into the planning process. This is a perfect example of why we kind of need that type of office to you know, do this, you know, public process, but then also be right there to pick it up and take it through to the next step. So so thanks for doing this. And it's you know, there's other opportunities like this. I think Center Street in Malden, you know, sort of by Stop and Shop could offer the same kind of opportunity. So thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, Councilor Winslow. Councilor Linehan, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, first of all, +1 to what Councilor Winslow just said about this seems like a natural fit for some of the things we were just talking about in terms of growing our planning capacity on the transportation side, especially. But I just want to thank Evan and Jeff and Heather. That was a really exciting presentation. I appreciated all the visuals. I'm a very visual learner, and I'm assisted a lot by when presentations help you to see with kind of that urban design, what it is now and what it could be. I particularly like the emphasis on the shade and trees and the implied climate resilience there. I think, you know, as you said, there's a lot of potential and a greater need for kind of safe outdoor gathering spaces. That's definitely something that I hear a lot from constituents. I also was really surprised by some of the business and jobs potential there. I don't know if I would have necessarily seen all of the different ways that you work that in. And I liked the kind of the different connections that you wove through from one side, you know, to the other. There are parcels that I wouldn't have necessarily thought could be connected by foot or bike. And I liked how you balanced that with, you know, the walking and the need for better walking and biking facilities, but also being reasonable about the parking. And I guess that kind of ties into what my questions are. So I'm curious about three things. I'm wondering how this ties into what Everett's doing on their stretch of the corridor. I'm also wondering if we have data around mode share now, or if that's something that's coming in a future phase. And then finally, where would we stand timing wise in things like the tip process vis-a-vis your action timeline that you laid out?
Okay, so in terms of how it ties into Everett, I think that there is a opportunity to really mimic what they're doing along certain stretches of the corridor, particularly along Broadway Plaza and up more toward the Melrose line. I do think that there is a way in looking, especially at the complete streets policy for the city, of tying it all throughout the corridor, but you'd have to be mindful of where the road really narrows. But I do think that there is a way to be able to make it work throughout the entire corridor. That being said, in terms of the data, a transportation study would have to be done. I know in Everett, they kind of went in there in the middle of the night and painted lanes and said, we're going to try this and see how it works. And it ended up working for them. I think it's important to note that what works in one place may not necessarily work in another. So looking at that, I think there has to be a consideration for it. Data around road share, we're not there yet. And it would be something that you'd have to look at in the future. And then in timing of the tip process, again, that would have to come out of doing a transportation analysis, a study of that area, and trying to figure out how you prioritize what improvements and what can go on the tip, what other funding sources can help contribute to improvements that are identified and the like.
Great, thank you so much. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilor Linehan. Councilor O'Malley, you're next.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Would you mind bringing up the slide where you showed the timeline again, if possible?
Is this the slide you were talking about?
Well, maybe you just mentioned this. Maybe you just mentioned, yeah, this is fine. Maybe you just mentioned the timeline. I thought I had missed something. My apologies. Yeah, and I think that you guys kind of hit the nail on the head. And I'm glad you didn't mince any words about like what it's like to drive through this corridor, what it's like to actually walk down this corridor. You know, it's not pleasant to drive down. I've biked down it, and it's rather dangerous. So I couldn't really imagine what it must be like to live along the corridor or to even walk along it. And the fact that there are no sidewalks for a large portion of it has always seemed very dangerous to me, considering it's kind of like an off-ramp to the highway, and is often filtering a lot of people through this area. So seeing how we can make sure it's more livable is really crucial. and tying it into obviously the work that's happening down in Everett. I know that they're talking about doing a bus rapid transit system where you will actually be able to, it's kind of like a silver line, I guess. You'd be able to kind of get on it and take the bus through a priority lane that would bring you all the way to North Station. So something like that could completely change the east side of our city, where right now you have a lot of people commuting across the city to go take the Orange Line. If they could skip that entire, many people talk about how long it takes to drive across Malden. If you could skip that process and go straight into Boston, I think it would really change the entire east side of the city in a really great way. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Condon, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. There seems to be an increase in businesses, widening of sidewalks, landscaping. In order to accomplish this, will involve taking property of homeowners or anything?
We do not have any properties identified in our plan is strictly conceptual. It helps to show and promote the vision for the corridor, but we have not identified nor discussed any kind of acquisitions of any properties. That would be something that would have to be determined in the future as other transportation studies are completed or other redevelopment plans.
In the development of this corridor, I don't think I saw anything as far as residential development. Is that correct?
I can jump in on
Which
that.
I'm happy to hear, by the way.
We, there is some residential, but again, it's very conceptual. We minimize the amount of residential. Let me phrase it that way. There are some buildings identified for multi-use, and in those cases, we'd like to see active first floor, retail or offices that people are moving in and out of frequently. And then on the upper floors, we left it open that it could be residential or commercial uses on the upper floors, but there really was an emphasis on commercial use and really minimizing residential.
I see. Most of our tax base involves residential, with the probably 25% business tax base. So I, for one, would like to see more business come into the city. Means jobs and widen that tax base. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. And I'm just going to kind of piggyback. Councilor Condon, you and I seem to be going one after the other here. So one of the comments that I heard that came first, was first stated, that maybe write it down, was the phrase urban compact development. And that, really kind of made me sit up and take notice, because it made me want to ask you, in doing this survey, did you take a look at the survey we did a couple of years ago where we had 2,100 residents respond versus 140 about how they wanted to see their city look from a perspective of development, especially residential development? And I'm just curious whether you brought any of that survey, which is probably the largest survey that really had like a 3% accuracy one way or the other, into the development of this presentation that you brought forward to us this evening.
We had looked at prior plans that had been created related to various projects throughout the city, as well as overall citywide data. If you're referring to that survey as being part of the master plan process, then yes, we had taken a look at that. I think it's important to note that this neighborhood has a different look and feel to it than other parts of the city, primarily with downtown really being the most dense and compact and urban development. However, it almost feels like this corridor is not part of the city of Malden in terms of how different it is from the rest of the city. So while I'm not necessarily answering your question in a way that says yes or no, we looked at that particular survey, we did take into consideration all of the existing background information that was available to us.
Okay, I think that survey is really key in looking at what the neighbors, okay, want in the city of Malden, and that really is not urban compact development. So that just kind of raised, immediately kind of just raised made me write it down and want to question that, because I think it's it's important not to go on a few who maybe participate in a lot of surveys. I mean, that survey required people to provide addresses. So it was really a survey that, showed the breadth of what the general feeling of the residents in the city of Malden, felt about development. So that was one thing I wanted to ask. And, the other thing was, I'm not sure. And, I hear a lot of people say, we don't want to be Everett. We don't want to be Somerville. We don't want to be, other cities. We want to be Malden. So, I appreciate what you had said a little while ago about, the fact that, you don't know how Everett would, work into our structure here. So, that was a great comment that I like to hear you say. And I have, with Evan, been working on Malden River Works, and we've had about 4, Evan, is it 4? 3 or 4? I think maybe 4, community meetings where we've kind of refined, really what people wanted to see on the riverfront. So did you just do one meeting? And I was just curious, how many residential homeowners actually participated in that study or that survey versus commercial people? Or how many people were there in total? And what was the breakout? Were they really from that neighborhood, or were they from other parts of the city who, just thought they wanted to see something different in that area? Because there are a lot of great, on those side streets, there's a lot of great residential neighborhoods. And I'm a counselor who's always kind of protect the neighborhood. So, it's great, if we can do something in the corridor that doesn't impact the neighborhood. And I was just curious what the percentages were of people who came to your public meeting and how many of them were actually from the neighborhood.
Sure. So our outreach efforts were primarily to those people within the neighborhood and along the corridor. We had approximately 25 to 30 people there from the neighborhood, and they were residents who lived along the side streets off of the corridor. And a lot of the comments that we received were really related to that, the transportation, traffic, safety, and the like. Particularly for that community meeting. We had a couple of business owners show up and a couple of property owners show up who were landlords. Within that survey that we did online, the majority of the respondents were from the city of Malden and either lived in Malden or worked in the corridor or had some kind of reason to go to the corridor. We did ask those questions. We didn't necessarily ask for their address of where they lived, though.
Okay. And my last question, because I know and I take this with a full grain of salt. This is conceptual. Okay. But I guess it just, a couple of things that just kind of raised in my mind were, with all of the discussion going on today with the T and their, maybe downsizing, the lack of ridership, people working from home. Are you factoring any of kind of, our new normal into this survey? Or because I think our new normal is going to be very different from what we saw a year ago or 12 months ago. And I was just wondering, if any of that played into this particular presentation.
No, so all of our analysis was done prior to COVID hitting. Okay. And that is noted in our report.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And, appreciate you coming for us and, giving us all this great information. It's always good to look at something a little bit different. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Spatafora. You're muted.
Yeah, my mouse wasn't working. I apologize. I think it fell asleep. Thank you. No offense. I think the mouse fell asleep, not me. I think a lot of the councils said what I was going to say. I think conceptually it's always good to see drawings, and I think it's nice to see some of those dangerous intersections that are not probably functional in terms of whatever method of transportation you're taking to become a little bit more pleasant or aesthetic, but certainly maintain its intent in terms of being a way to a causeway, like that bend, the dog leg. That's a hairy turn in daylight doing 20, never mind at night doing 25. So I think it's good to see conceptually. And I know these are just kind of conceptual. So I have a couple questions real quick. So real quick, and I think it's just, let me say the biggest one first. Do you think COVID affects anything in terms of type of development along the stretch of this? Because I think these surveys were all done, or the meeting was done pre-COVID, right? So do you think that has an impact in terms of, I'm not talking about the road work, I'm talking about the development. Do you think that has an impact there?
I think in the short term, you can probably say that there would be an impact to office development. There could be an impact to a proposed hotel, but I do think it's only short term. Okay. I think if you were to look out, I mean, things are going to change. It's to be determined how much they're going to change and how much they're going to go back to the way they were pre-COVID. I do think, though, with the conceptual plans that were laid out in terms of placement of buildings, that is something that it doesn't matter if it's COVID related or not. I think it shows that there can be a way to create some kind of energy within a site that's at a higher and a better use than what is there presently.
Yeah, fair enough. I was just wondering if you guys from a thought process there. The other question is up on Broadway towards the Melrose line. Did you? And I know it's always been. I think it's been talked about a couple times. I don't want to say who owns the property now, but I know there was that even Lowe's, they don't have access to the other side of. They sit between Broadway and the highway, and I think there's only one property now that has access to that highway. Where I think if you had access on both sides, that changes, I think, the conception of that property, a potential use of that property, because now you're having two means, especially from a retail conception. Was that ever discussed on your design proposals? You know what I'm talking about, those properties there that they back up to the highway, to Route 1?
I do know what you're talking about, and I do not believe they're within our study area.
Okay. I know the state's always been reluctant to open up that area, but I know that could be beneficial, I think, for not only the property owners, but I think what you could put there, right? Because now you have two ways of access. And then my final question would be, and I think I know what you meant. I think it's I don't know if it's a play in words, but you mentioned a couple times by combining properties or parcels, you create larger developments. But then in other cases you said, and maybe it's not you, maybe it's the residents, they would like to see bookstores or independent, smaller type of businesses. And it's almost like a catch-22, because if you have the larger parcels and you have larger developments, you really don't often see independent small businesses because of the cost of rent in these quote unquote commercial developments. But is that just a play on words, or just a sequencing of events the way it came in terms of what the residents wanted?
I think it depends on where in the corridor they're going to be located. So if they're in an area where there are, it's the residential core, but it's got the neighborhood kind of commercial node where you have smaller storefronts within a larger building, it would make sense. I think in the areas we have designated more for, say, to the north in the corridor where we have the larger parcels for larger commercial development, no, that wouldn't make sense to have those there.
Fair enough. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafor. Does anybody else wish to speak on this topic? Seeing Councilor O'Malley.
You just share the presentation with us by email, and then are you going to post it online?
It's already online. Sorry.
Great, thank you.
Public record.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. So on behalf of the chair and also the ward councilor who the majority of this Broadway corridor is located in, just for anybody that's watching this presentation, this is actually just a vision. This is not something that we are in the process of doing or going to be doing, because a lot of the visions that are in this presentation are on privately owned land. So this is just something that we would hope that we could work towards. And I think Councilor Kamel would agree with me. A lot of the pretty pictures and the purple and pink parcels from this presentation are already currently owned by local business owners, and their vision may not be the same vision that we have for this particular stretch of the corridor. We can work with, you know, the gaming commission to get the bike lanes and, you know, do the traffic and maybe some benches with wider sidewalks. But unfortunately, we can't ask these business owners to tear down, say, for instance, the 621 and relocate the building to closer to the street and then have parking behind it. And even, you know, the bike path that I saw that came along Howard Park and went across Broadway, it would have actually went into private property, you know, on the opposite side of Broadway. So I just want to be perfectly clear. I don't want, you know, my email to blow up or my phone to start going crazy that, you know, when is this happening? You know, all this. This is just a vision that we would like to see sometime in the future, possibly, of what we would like this whole corridor to actually look like. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So, you know, not just me, but Councilor Kamel could end up getting some phone calls, and the councilor at larges could be getting some phone calls about this project. So this is just a vision that we hope, you know, one day we could actually work towards. So I just wanted to make that statement. And I want to thank you all for coming and showing us your presentation. It was beautiful. And in a perfect world, the Broadway corridor would look like that. Maybe hopefully sometime in the future, we'll all be around to see something like that actually exist. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
So next order of business, City Clerk.
Okay, we have two sets of minutes. Paper 4/11/20, minutes of the meetings on November 24th, and paper 4/12/20, minutes of the meeting December 1st. If I could just say something about those minutes on December 1st, you may have saw the adjournment and the roll call in triplicate. That was just Granicus being cranky, and it insisted on printing it that way. But if they get accepted, when they get to be a final record, it will be just the record of one.
Great.
Motion to approve.
Great. On Councilor Winslow's motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Spatafora to approve these two sets of minutes. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
yes.
Condon,
yes.
Crow,
Yes.
DiMaria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Yes.
Thank you. Minutes are approved.
Next order of business.
We have some licenses, paper 4/13/20, class 1, absolute auto rental and sales 495 Broadway. It's a renewal. Paper 4/14/20, class 2, AGM Auto Sales, Inc., 160 Eastern Ave, 18 cars. It's change of address, number of cars. Paper 4/15/20, class 2, Auto Bazaar Corp., 17 Charles Street, 21 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/16/20, class 2, Greenleaf Auto Enterprises, Inc., 28 Broadway, 50 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/17/20, class 2, Greenleaf Auto Sales 2, Inc., 69 Newland Street, 30 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/18/20, class 2, Louis Foreign Car Garage, Inc., 191 Salem Street, 2 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/19/20, class 2, Macmillan Automotive, 388 Eastern Ave, 15 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/20/20, class 2, Quality Auto Sales, 856 Eastern Ave, 0 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/21/20, class 2, River Auto Sales, Inc., 77 Eastern Ave, 21 cars. It's a renewal. Paper 4/22/20, class 2, Seekers Automotive, 1114 Eastern Ave, 2 cars, it's a renewal. Paper 423-20, Class 2, Wentworth Auto Sales, 730 Eastern Ave, Suite 091B, 15 cars, it's a renewal. And paper 424-20, Outdoor Parking, AGM Auto Sales, Inc., 135 Eastern Ave, Malden, 24 spaces, it's new.
Counselor Murphy for the light.
Refer to license, please. License committee.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. On Counselor Murphy's motion to refer these petitions to license, seconded by Counselor Linehan, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
No, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
DeMaria,
yes,
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Metaphora,
Metaphor, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Yes.
License or petitions referred to license 11-0.
Great. Matters have been referred. City Clerk, before we go any further, did we have any public comment?
No, we did not.
Okay. And then next order of business.
Paper 425-20, order that the mayor and city council hereby fix the following dates and hours for the 2021 city preliminary and election for the election of councilors, at-large, ward councils, and school committee members. May 4th nomination papers available at the city clerk's office, July 22nd, 5:00 PM. Last day and hour to obtain nomination papers from the city clerk's office, July 27th, 5:00 PM. Last day and hour to submit nomination papers to the Register of Voters Office for certification, August 10th, 5:00 PM. Last day and hour to file certified nomination papers with the city clerk's office, August 12th, 5:00 PM. Last day and hour for filing withdrawals from nominations for the preliminary or objections to nominations, August 25th, 8:00 PM. Close of registration for the preliminary, September 7th, 5:00 PM. First campaign finance statement due. September 14th is the primary. September 20th, 5:00 PM. Last day and hour to withdraw from nominations at the preliminary or petition for a recount of votes, or if a preliminary is not held, to withdraw for nomination for the final election. October 13th, 8:00 PM. Close of registration for election. October 25th, 5:00 PM. Second campaign finance campaign statement due. November 2nd, the election. November 12th, 5:00 PM. Last day and hour to petition for recount of votes of election. And then January 20th of 2022, final campaign finance statement due.
So do we have a motion to adopt these dates and times?
So moved.
Oh, excuse me, Counselor O'Malley, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to confirm last year, Councilor Winslow led a initiative to increase the amount of time people had to get nomination forms and run for office for municipal seats. We kept the expanded date, correct?
Yeah, we went, from what I understand, Council Winslow made, I think it was before my time, but we went from 5 weeks to 11 weeks.
Yeah, no, it originally was almost the 1st of June, and now it's almost the 1st of May. So it's a whole more 4 weeks. So yeah, this is consistent. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So did I hear Counselor Anderson motion?
Yes.
Make a motion? Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so on Counselor Anderson's motion to adopt these dates and times, seconded by Counselor Kamel, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Anderson, yes.
Kamel,
Mel, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
DeMaria,
DeMaria, yes,
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Metaphora,
Metaphor, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Sika, yes.
Paper is adopted 11-0.
Great, next order of business.
Paper 426-20, order that any revenue from film contracts go into the general fund.
Counselor O'Malley for the paper.
My goal here is just to refer these, the next two papers to finance for a more in-depth conversation, but just from a really high level perspective. The city occasionally gets film contracts, and the administration negotiates revenue from those different films that film here. So the goal is to have a conversation in finance just to discuss how is that money entering the city, what requirements does it need to follow under the Department of Revenue, and making sure that they go into the appropriate fund, however that is deemed by our city controller. So I would move to refer to finance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
On Councilor O'Malley's motion to refer this matter to finance, seconded by Councilor Di Maria, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Di Maria, yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Sika, yes.
11-0, papers referred to finance.
Great. Next order of business.
Paper 4, let's see. 427-20, order that any revenue received by the city of Malden from billboards and other advertising contracts go into the general fund.
Councilor O'Malley for the paper.
Same as the last conversation, just refer to finance for a more in-depth conversation.
Great. I think this is a great idea, Councilor O'Malley. I think we should also look into all the other mitigation accounts that we have throughout the city and not just one. So maybe you would, entertain putting that through on a paper so we can vet them all and not just one particular mitigation account. So,
Sponsor or something like that if you'd like.
okay. Councilor O'Malley's motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Linehan. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Oh, yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Di Maria, yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Sika, yes.
11-0, papers referred to finance.
Next order of business.
Paper 428-20, order that the city accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 55C, establishing a trust to be known as the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Councilor Winslow for the paper.
Yes, thank you. As you know, I'm the council's point person on our Affordable Housing Trust. The good news is we have, the trust has met. It's established its trust document. We finally have all the signatures and it's ready to go to the Registry of Deeds so that trust will actually be established. But I think in getting ready for this, it was pointed out that the city had not actually adopted the statute that allows us to do all this. So this is taking care of that matter of business so that we have adopted that statute as a matter of local business. And I guess I'd have a question for Attorney McNutt. I'm not certain if this actually ends up being sort of an ordinance that we have to enroll and then, or ordain, or whether we can just do this order all at once. So that I don't know how we do the process of adopting a ordinance. So yeah, or Greg.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
So you've already ordained the structure of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is something that we just have to notify the state that we've adopted this, along with, we have a whole list of these types of Mass General laws that we've adopted. This just kind of goes on that list. So we notify the state that tonight we adopted it, and that's all you need to do.
So it doesn't become part of the code of ordinances, then we just
No, it's not. No. So it comes. Like I say, I probably have 3 pages of all these laws in my office. A list of everything all through the years that we've adopted. So this would go on that list, and we notify the state that the city council adopted it.
Okay, so then I just would make a motion to adopt the order.
Seconded.
On Councilor Winslow's, Councilor Kamel, I apologize. Go ahead.
Sorry. So this would just, would this be, I apologize, maybe I can just check this off the, myself, but would this become one more account that is under the city accounts that Chuck manages?
So just on that, in the Affordable Housing Trust, we made that discussion in establishing the trust and the rules of the trust. We are having Dan, the city treasurer, actually manage the accounts and be the treasurer of the trust, which is consistent with state law and state practice. So that's just something that the trustees have already done. And so this is, when we file the paperwork with the state and at the registry, then the trust will actually be established. And right now we haven't actually been able to earn interest on the mitigation money that's set aside. So once the paperwork is filed by the legal office at the registry, then the trust actually starts accruing interest and that type of thing. We are, so that's Dan Grover, we've reached an agreement that he's getting a stipend to be the treasurer of the trust. So
Thanks, just a minor mechanics of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Linehan, are you the one that seconded this?
No, I'd be happy to, but it wasn't me.
It was Peg,
Peg.
sorry. I apologize. I knew it was a woman. I wasn't sure where it came from. Okay, so on Councilor Winslow's motion to adopt, seconded by Councilor Crowe, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Yes.
Condon,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Siki, yes.
Motion is adopted 11-0.
Next order of business.
Paper 429, resolved that a presentation by our assessor with regard to setting the tax rate for the city of Malden be presented to the City Council Finance Committee in October each year. The timeline will offer each councilor the opportunity to discuss and ask questions, bringing it in a public hearing to the council floor at a future meeting.
Councilor Di Maria? For the
Yes.
paper. Resolved, excuse me.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank our controller, Chuck Ranigan, and our assessor, Mr. Oh my God, what is wrong with
Grover.
him?
Oh,
No.
he said, I'm sorry.
Nathan, yes, okay, thank you. For helping me work on this resolve in order to streamline the process. Our annual process goes on for about an hour and a half every year. And we as a collaborative group have great questions. We do our work in committee. So I believe that a presentation in October would be fabulous. And then we send it to our finance committee for further discussion, and that gives a great timeline to file appropriately. And both gentlemen helped with the drafting of this resolve. So I do hope you see this favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Di Maria. Councilor Kamel, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to express that this is a great idea. It was remiss to not have done this year. Some may recall I myself had many questions, and it was incumbent upon me to probably have asked those sooner. So this is a good idea. I think even before this, I agree with this, but even before this, I think we should continue to ask some questions in terms of a what if analysis. What if we had changed to different tax exemptions and things like that? So I think those are things we can explore even before October. I know the setting of the final tax rate requires some information they won't have at this time in October, but I'm sure they can discuss it with some hypotheticals and give us a clear enough sense that we have a better idea. So we're not doing it all in an hour and a half presentation. So thanks to Councilor Di Maria for this, and thanks to to Chuck and Nate for helping. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilor Kamel, would you second her motion to pass this resolve?
I will.
Okay. On Councilor Di Maria's motion, seconded by Councilor Kamel, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Di Maria, yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Siki, yes.
Resolve is carries 11-0.
Next order of business.
Paper 430-20, resolved that as a sense of the City Council that in accordance with our mission to foster equity and inclusion for all residents, the city of Malden purchase menorahs and kinaras suitable for outdoor display to accompany our annual installation of illuminated Christmas trees around the city.
Counselor O'Malley for the resolve.
So this resolve is generated on the fact that we've had community members for the past few years who have asked that the same way we celebrate Christmas with Christmas trees, that we celebrate other holidays during this time of year. I know I personally, when I was a child here in Malden, every elementary school would decorate their own Christmas tree with different ornaments, and we'd go down to City Hall, and then maybe it was the City Council, I don't know, would select the best Christmas tree designed by the school. At some point, that tradition looks like it's disappeared, but we still know that across the city, we put up trees that, recently we've decided to rebrand as holiday trees. But I think, everyone knows that, if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So I think it's helpful to celebrate all different types of holidays, considering the fact that we do celebrate Christmas so great in Malden. So this was what the goal was. Since we submitted this paper, we have found out that the city of Malden has purchased their own menorah for this year, and they will be displaying it at City Hall, which is, I think, a great thing. So I do appreciate the fact that we are moving forward with that. And I just want to give a shout out to Lori Ardai and Tracy O'Connor for pushing this forward in our community. I'm hoping to pass it without much fanfare, but looking to hear what the discussion is. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Linehan, you have your hand up.
Oh, I thought Counselor DiMaria, are you good? Is she all set?
Yeah, took it, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, not to be redundant, but I just was happy to co-sponsor this. I think it signals that we're really making an effort to be inclusive of the array of beliefs here. I've heard from a lot of residents who's really, really happy to see what we've done so far, and also just have encouraged us to go even further. We're really lucky to have community members that step up and help to coordinate either the loan or the purchase of things like a menorah. I think since this has gone on the agenda, even with the announcement that we're going to be having the menorah lighting this week, I've had members of the community reach out and say that they're happy to step up and take on the coordination of either buying or borrowing a kinara in order to celebrate Kwanzaa. And I think that, as a diverse community, it says a lot that we're able to step up and support the wide array of beliefs that are here. And so I'm hoping that, this is something that we can support as well, and just, be inclusive and be open and signal that we see all people the same and that we're open to hearing perspectives from the community.
Thank you. Counselor Kamel, you're next.
Yeah, just want to voice my support for this, and it's this is the strength of our community, the diversity and all the different cultural influences we have here, and this is a great way to celebrate it. And additionally, I want to echo that shout out to Lori Ardai and Tracy O'Connor as well. Especially Lori, she's right next door, she's my next door neighbor, and has been a great friend since before I was even on the council. So it's fantastic to see this. So thanks to her for all she's done.
Great, thank you. And I too am in full support of this resolve. I helped out in the purchasing of the menorah. I went back and forth with the mayor multiple times. We have been looking for a kinara as well, Councilor Linehan, but unfortunately they don't make 6-foot kinaras. Like the menorah is like a life-size menorah. The only size of a kinara that we seemed to be able to find is a regular tabletop one. So that may have to do just in the lobby of City Hall for Kwanzaa. We have a few more weeks, a little bit more time to figure out what we're going to do for that particular holiday. But we have been, looking daily to see if we could have found a bigger one. And if we can't, then we'll have to go with the traditional like tabletop version. And I suggested that maybe we just put it in the lobby so everybody can see. Something like that is too small to keep outside in fear of getting vandalized or stolen. So we will have one of those as well. So I have a motion maybe from Councilor O'Malley for this resolve. And did I get a set? Oh, Councilor Murphy, I apologize. I just saw your hand. Go ahead.
That's okay. I just thought you might want to mention that, this is actually the second annual lighting of the menorah.
Yes.
That, this did happen last year. The mayor was listening to the general public last year. And although we had to borrow the menorah and have since rectified that by purchasing one, that, this is not new to the community. And I think that this resolve, although I will support it tonight, could even be broader, because we're just talking, this is very specific about 2 different symbols, whereas I think there might be many more. And I think we should, if we're going to be inclusive, we should not have the resolve just specifically relate to 2 nationalities. I'll give you a perfect example. I know, Councillor O'Malley, you said if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. But as a Christian, I've had many years since my kids were grown that I didn't put a Christmas tree up, but I always have a manger. That's my staple, is my religious belief. So a lot of people, kind of associate the Christmas tree with the Christian religion, but the true symbol of Christianity is the manger, not the Christmas tree. So I think we need to be reflective about, there might be other festivals, and not just around the Christmas holidays, that we need to be aware of and open to and willing to express within our halls of City Hall. So not saying that we need to make a motion to change this evening, but as we move forward into the year and we think about different Indian traditions or other traditions and how they celebrate, I think we as a council and a community need to be open to those also. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor O'Malley, go ahead.
I just want to say I agree wholeheartedly with you, Councilor Murphy. And if you wanted to amend it tonight to be more inclusive, I would be willing to accept the friendly amendment. I know that unfortunately this year we weren't able to have it, but I know in past years we've had holy celebrations, HOLI, the Indian Festival of Lights. So I do think that Malden is a community that does fully embrace all of our different cultures. I think it's crucial that we do it in an equitable manner. Hopefully this gets us a little closer to that, but I would be willing to accept a friendly amendment if you're willing to make one.
Councilor, President, Councilor
Go
Seeker.
ahead. Go ahead.
I would just say, Councilor O'Malley, be happy to, I think we should just pass it as you have it on the floor this evening. And then I think what we should do is maybe spend a little time talking about it so that we don't just add a few things here and there, that we actually have a broader discussion about what's maybe appropriate for the city. So I'm happy to support what you've put in this evening and looking forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Okay, so I had a motion by Councilor O'Malley and a second by,
Second.
Perfect. Councilor Di Maria, to pass this resolve. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Oh, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Di Maria, yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Tika.
Sika, yes.
Resolve carries 11-0.
Perfect. Next order of business.
Paper 373-20, order be it hereby ordained that section 2.20.060 of the revised ordinances of 2020 be amended by adding primary operator of the public water system to the unclassified employee salary schedule with a salary of $20,000.
Where am I? Okay. Did we miss a communication from the planning board? Or is that in a
Further
different?
down.
Yeah, that's further down.
Oh, it's on my script as next. I apologize. I got a little confused. I had to look to see where you were. Okay, so Councilor Spatafora or Councilor Kamel, who's talking for this?
Councilor Kamel, if you want, I mean, you can, okay, I'll go. I mean, so this was,
We've already enrolled it. It needs to be.
Yeah, we've enrolled this. This is just the second step of
That's
finalizing this, so.
yeah, I think everybody knows, I mean, it's a financial paper and an ordinance that's created a separate use for $20,000 to classify an employee who has a class, I think it's class 4 water license There's only one
D4.
individual right now, D4, excuse me, thank you. And if more come online, we will certainly look at amending this accordingly, but this is allows us to have that a set amount of money, which is a pretty competitive place right now to have those D4 licenses. And also it's something we need in the community. So if we don't have somebody on staff, we have to outsource, which would probably cost us more than $20,000. So both ordinance and finance met. I think everybody understands the historical manner of this and kind of the debate that went on, but looking for the support both of the finance committee and the ordinance, the full council rather, excuse me. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, so which one of you want to sponsor? Does it matter?
Motion to, motion to.
Ordain.
Yep, ordained.
Okay.
They've been enrolled.
Yep.
Yes, ordained.
Okay, seconded by Spatafora. So Councilor Kamel has a motion to ordain, seconded by Councilor Spatafora. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Camille, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Di Maria, yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Nellie is not here.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika,
Sika, yes.
Councilor O'Malley. Can you come back? Ordinance passes 10-0.
Next order of business.
O'Malley, yes, sorry.
O'Malley, yes, okay.
Okay.
Passes 11-0. Paper 374-20, order be hereby ordained that section 2.12.100 of the revised ordinances of 2020 be amended by adding section C to include a primary operator of the public water system.
I'll pick it up. Yeah, so this is just the mechanics of the second part of the same package that Council Spatafora was just talking about. Motion to enroll.
Seconded by
Motion to ordain.
Ordain.
I'll get that eventually.
On Councilor Kamel's motion to ordain, seconded by Councilor Spatafora, the clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Camille, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Di Maria, yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
Yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Sika, yes.
Order is ordained.
Okay, next order of business.
Paper 431-20, communication, Malden Planning Board, planning report and recommendation regarding short-term rental, family and rooming house, paper 261-20.
Okay, Councilor Spatafora.
So this is the culmination of the public hearing that we had 2 weeks ago, I believe, with the joint planning, joint planning and ordinance. The two topics at hand were unrelated parties in the city of Malden, kind of debating the state level versus our rules and regulations and how better it could help us enforce some of the problems we have with apartments, illegal apartment units. And then the second part of that, in probably right, the next door neighbor, if you would be, no pun intended, short-term rentals and making that a use category and then not making that allowed. Right now, it's kind of a gray area. I know some councils have some properties in the neighborhood that because we do not have a use or a defined zone, and it's not disallowed, we are running up against some legal challenges. So this was attended by both the planning board and the city ordinance, the Malden Council City Ordinance, as well as Nelson Miller, who represented the building commission, Nelson Miller, and spoke in favor of both of these. So they have now been gone through that process. The plan is to have a meeting next week to talk about these. I know the mayor called me earlier. There are some issues that we would like to get this in front of pretty quickly because there's some outstanding properties that this affects. So the plan is to at least have a meeting next week at ordinance and either take those recommendations from the joint meeting and either alter, amend, make a recommendation from the ordinance committee back to the full council so we can have a vote on it. Happy to discuss it. I believe Michelle might have mailed it out and emailed it to everybody because I know I received it. If there's any questions, I can share that with you.
So motion to refer to ordinance,
Correct. Motion to refer to ordinance.
second.
Second.
Councilor Spatafora's motion to refer this matter to ordinance, seconded by Councilor Crowe. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Oh, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crowe,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes. Sorry.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafor, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Tika,
Tiki, yes.
11-0, papers referred to ordinance.
Next order of business.
So paper 432-20, rules and ordinance, paper 192-20, order that rules and ordinance discuss, update the sign control 12.24, the rules and ordinances of 2020.
I don't think this should be on there, Mr. Clerk, right? Because this was already voted out last week.
No.
It was voted out of ordinance.
Ordinance, yeah. Yeah, but is this to ordain? Enroll?
No, it's committee
It's to
report.
enroll.
Committee report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Still on the committee report. Okay, that's why thank you.
Councilor Spatafora's motion to receive the committee report.
Yep,
The
thank
clerk
you.
will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Kamel, yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crowe,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafor, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Tika.
Tiki, yes.
Committee report is received 11-0.
Councilor Spatafora for the committee.
Thank you, and I apologize for that little aneurysm I had there. The committee report. So the ordinance committee last week discussed some updating to our sign ordinance. It is a living and breathing document. I believe it came out of ordinance 4-1 with support of creating some additional use categories as well as making some liberal changes to the policies. You know, I will just say with the sign design review, not only, you know, some of the impact that we're facing is not only different types of signs, but certainly technology, and that's the culmination of this. We also had a debate about just to let the audience know, and maybe some of their council members, we did have a pretty lengthy debate at the end of that about the bike path and creating some signage opportunities there. I know that after last week's meeting, I reached out to Council Winslow and Nelson, because Nelson sits in the sign committee, as well as Council Murphy did, and we're already working to craft an amendment to that to create that type of use in that category. I believe Council Winslow will be attending the next sign ordinance meeting, so we're working to quickly, I would say, plug that hole or patch the ordinance to allow for that with some better understanding. But that will be a separate paper. I'm probably going to refer that next week so we can get that fixed pretty quickly. But this was sent out, like I said, favorably, I believe 4-1. Any questions?
Motion to enroll?
I would put a motion to enroll, unless there's any questions. Okay.
On Councilor Spatafora's motion to enroll, seconded by Councilor Winslow. The clerk will call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Kamel,
Yes.
Condon,
Condon, yes.
Crowe,
Yes.
Di Maria,
Yes.
Linehan,
Linehan, yes.
Murphy,
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley,
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora,
Spatafor, yes.
Winslow,
Winslow, yes.
Sika.
Tiki, yes.
11-0, papers enrolled.
Next order of business.
Docket is clear.
Docket is clear. Do we have anybody for personal privilege? Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you very much. I just want to remind the community that tomorrow at 6 p.m., so tomorrow, Wednesday, December 9th at 6 p.m. via Zoom, the city will be hosting the second Spot Palm Brook Greenway feasibility study meeting. If you'd like to attend that, you can go to www.cityofmalden.org/Spot Palm Brook Greenway /SPBG. To clarify, a feasibility study does not mean it's happening. A feasibility study purely is for us to engage the community, hear what people have to say, investigate property ownership, find out conflicts, So there have been a number of people reaching out about the potential routes, different routes. And that's exactly what we want to happen. So I do appreciate the phone calls and people reaching out. Wish everyone a happy Hanukkah, our Jewish community who is celebrating. And one of the reasons why I was missing during that roll call earlier is I was looking to see if I could dig out the Christmas decoration that I made when I was at the homeschool, and I found it. There's my name on the back, so it's legit. So thank you for entertaining me on that. Bye.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. And I too want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. And I also want to just talk a little bit about, I'm not sure, when you talk about traditions in Malden, I don't know if we have a record of what the longest standing Malden traditions are. But one that I think is probably up there in maybe the top 10, if not the top 3, is a tradition that's been going on this year for 71 years. Okay, seriously, 71 years. I've been following it for a number of years. And that is Santa Claus coming to Pine Banks Park. And Santa Claus is coming to Pine Banks Park this year, even with COVID-19. It's coming COVID 2020 style. But on January 9th, on December 19th, I said January, sorry, getting into 2021. On December 9th, Saturday, December 19th, from 1 to 3 p.m., Santa Claus will be making his 71st annual visit to Pine Banks Park to see all of the good little children of Malden and Melrose and anybody else who wants to come. You don't have to live in Malden and Melrose to come. It's going to be a little different this year as opposed to the children seeing Santa in his office, which is you can all see on Main Street. Santa is going to be in the park. And we're going to have a drive-through version of Santa's, visit. The Ward 5 elves will be there handing out candy canes. And also through Councilor Condon, the elves will be able to pick up Santa Claus's letters and deliver them to the post office for all the children. We also will have a number of characters there. We're going to have Christmas beer and Olaf, Elmo, Frosty, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, as well as Mrs. Claus. Her elves will be handing out hot chocolate and cookies to go so you can enjoy them at home. And obviously, the grand prize will be seeing Santa at the end of your drive through the lovely wooded Pine Banks Park. Superintendent Andrew Walsh and his team, have been working diligently and will continue to work diligently through next week to get everything ready for all of the visitors coming into the park. So we hope to see you on Saturday, December 19th from 1 to 3 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kamel.
Well, there are many wonderful holidays and celebrations in this time of year, but I want to be a little bit a little bit biased here and wish one of the most important ones, which is my son's Dimitri's 8th birthday, which is coming up on Thursday. And trivia fact.
Yay, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I think we should sing him happy birthday.
Oh, boy.
Aww.
You should start a call.
Go ahead, Paul. Happy birthday.
Let's go.
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy
birthday, happy birthday to you.
Poor kid's gonna need therapy.
Boy, that was pretty sad.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Born,
Fire or not.
he was born 2 days after what would have been my grandmother's 100th birthday. So
Wow.
she's in her 108th today. So anyways, thank you very much. And happy Hanukkah to everybody.
Thank you. Councilor Condon, you are next.
Oh, thank you. This week we'll be finalizing our presentation of our master plan for the rehabilitation of Deborah Park. We'll be having a public meeting Wednesday, December 16th, for the public to join us and present that master plan to the public to solicit their feedback on that. And then the 17th, we'll be having a meeting with Mayor's office and the council lodges and to go over possible funding mechanisms. So hopefully we'll have this on the fast track in a week or two. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor DeMaria, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. First off, happy Hanukkah to our wonderful Jewish community, and hope you all have a healthy holiday. Second off, this survey has been on the City of Malden's Facebook page, and it is the COVID Memorial Survey that we are reaching out to our residents to fill out. It gives them options of where they might envision this respectful memorial to be in our city, and you know, respecting those that have passed and our first responders as well. So it will really take you 5 minutes. So I hope you all take it. And we've had some good response in about, I think it's been up there for about 4 days maybe, or 5 days. So it's very good. So that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, I wanted to also wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. Actually, the city menorah lighting is this coming Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We'd love to have people come down, but it's going to be on the city Facebook page. So we're doing it, and because of COVID-19, we don't want to have a big crowd. So it's on the, you can find out on the city Facebook page on that. Greater Malden Asian American Coalition is having its annual meeting this coming Saturday, and happy to say that Diana Zhang and Malden Neighbor Helping Neighbor are going to be honored there. So you can go to their website to find out more information. It is a fundraising event. And then let's see. Yeah, and I also wanted to say Malden Neighbor Helping Neighbor, they were looking for, I know we're doing some things for toys, but people are looking for just basic stuff like laundry soap and dish soap. So Malden Neighbor Helping Neighbor is looking for those things. So please help out, even as we give out some things for people to enjoy. The basic needs are still very much out there in our community. So do remember them as well. Thank you, and have a good Hanukkah.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank all of the people that came out to see Santa Claus in Ward 7 this last weekend. You know, the city canceled the annual holiday parade for good reason. Obviously, we wouldn't want people standing shoulder to shoulder along the parade route and such. But Santa Claus did want to make his way through Ward 7, and so we had a good turnout. Santa Claus was on an elevated platform on the back of a well-decorated truck that looked like it was a truck that was decorated for the Macy's Day Parade. And the people that came out seemed to be very happy with seeing it. It brought smiles to the faces of not only the children but the adults. And I commend my other colleagues on the council here for continuing to do the Santa Claus and other kind of decorations and other kind of celebrations, like Councilor Murphy is talking about there at Pine Banks Park. And I say to those of us that see this Santa Claus celebration that this is not a Christian tradition, as we know that Santa Claus was not at the resurrection, that Santa Claus is a childhood fantasy for all to enjoy. So no matter your religious beliefs, we think that everyone could enjoy this childhood fantasy And I thank those who helped put it together and those who came out, and wishing everyone a happy holiday, whatever you celebrate this season. I also want to mention that the Warming Center there at the Nazarene Church will be opening soon. And I think we saw a communication from Pastor Whetstone, who is inviting people to come to training sessions. You know, the Warming Center is a vital resource that we have here in our city for our homeless who have a place to get in out of the cold during the winter. So there are training sessions that are coming up. There are obviously new protocols in place given COVID-19 and our need to make sure that that everyone is safe, not only the volunteers that are working there, but as well the guests that come in for the evening. So if you wanted to do something good, check out what's going on, either as a volunteer at the Warming Center or a contributor. Either of those will work out well. Thank you very much. Happy holiday, everyone.
Thank you. Councilor Spatafora, you're next.
Let me see if my mic is off here.
It is on.
It is on. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Happy Hanukkah, and also known as the Festival of Lights. So I think it's today's the first night for them. I think it's right tomorrow. I should know the date. Thursday. Yes. Thank you. That the Thursday, the 10th. So happy Hanukkah to the Jewish community and the Festival of Lights. I also want to thank the residents of Malden and Council Linehan. We had the lighting of the tree last week, and also to Council Anderson's point. While it is not certainly a normal year, 2020, we try to make some normalcy in this time of certainly need to have some interaction. So we passed out hot chocolate and masks and candy canes. Pouches of hot chocolate to people in their cars, and some people did get out and take pictures with Santa Claus. So it was a very enjoyable and COVID-friendly type of event. It was nice to see people. It was nice to be out. It was beautiful weather. And then we went back to light the tree that evening on the Fellsmere Pond. And while it certainly was not as large of a crowd as usual, it certainly was enjoyable, and I think a lot of people did take notice of it, especially the neighbors, and certainly being able to use technology to showcase that tree, which every time I look at it, I drive by, it really, regardless of Christmas, you almost want to leave it there all year round because it's beautiful. So I want to thank Council Linehan and the residents of Malden, and also Santa Claus for stopping by. Everybody knows we have a famous Santa Claus here, so he could come by, and it was a joy, and I look forward to the holidays with everybody. And like I said, Happy New Year, and look forward to hopefully an enjoyable holiday season.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafora. And on behalf of the chair, I too want to wish all the residents of Malden a happy Hanukkah and a happy holiday. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Councilor DiMaria's motion, seconded by Councilor Condon. Clerk will call the roll. Yeah, I'm muted.
Clerk's muted.
Still muted.
I'm thinking you're saying Neil. I'm saying, where's Neil? Anderson.
Anderson, yes.
Kamel.
Well, yes.
Condon.
Condon, yes.
Crow.
Yes.
DiMaria.
Yes.
Linehan.
Linehan, yes.
Murphy.
Murphy, yes.
O'Malley.
O'Malley, yes.
Spatafora.
Spatafora, yes.
Winslow.
Winslow, yes.
Tika.
Speaking, yes.
Meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everybody.